Welcome back to another episode of Bon Voyage Besties, your go-to podcast for travel, empowerment, and all things adventure, with your host, Rosa, and the soon-to-be birthday girl, Rachel. And today we're super excited to dive into one of our absolute favorite destinations. You guessed it, Japan. And we're so excited to be joined by a very special guest, Sequoia Armstrong. Founder of Puebla, York, Sequoia brings together her lifelong love of travel, her deep cultural connection to Japan through her heritage, and her passion for Mexico into the incredible work she does. She's also the host of the Soul Wanderer podcast, where she inspires and empowers women of color to explore the world through solo and intentional travel. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about solo female travel in Japan, specifically why it's such an ideal destination, how to plan a meaningful and intentional trip, and ways to support local and women-owned businesses along the way. We'll also get into what you need to know before you go, from safety tips to cultural insights and navigating the language. So get ready, besties, because we're headed to Japan.
Yes, my favorite.
If you can't tell, we love Japan.
Yeah. Hello. Hi. Yeah, I love the enthusiasm.
Welcome to the show, Sequoia. We're super excited to have you on here.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Before we start talking all things Japan, we want to know a little bit more about you and what drew you to Japan in the first place.
Yeah. So, I was trying to keep it a little succinct, but I was born and raised in Maui, Hawaii, and I'm Japanese on my mother's side. So my first trip pretty much probably ever was as an infant. And I went to Japan, and I would go every summer to visit family and my grandparents. And also it seemed really important. My mom was really, I think I admire the tenacity of, like, as a single mom, to get me to visit Japan and to also be, fluent in the language and understand that part of my heritage. Yeah.
That is so amazing. Out of curiosity, what part of Japan is your family from?
So my mom is from Osaka, just, outside Osaka City. So that's
Rosa's favorite. That's Rosa's favorite.
Yeah, I'm a little biased. So it's like my second home. So I feel like when people sometimes are like, I love Osaka more than Tokyo, I'm like, well, I know. Yeah. So,
yeah, it was so
question.
much fun visiting Osaka. So I think I spent either 4 or 5 days there on my own solo trip, and the food was just absolutely amazing. I went solo to this Michelin restaurant and felt like such a queen because I'm always scared to dine solo, and it was amazing. But we also did so much like great karaoke. I did like a back alley tour that included food and more karaoke, and it was just like such a fun, vibrant city. I had the best time, and I'm glad I followed Rosa's advice, because before I went, she was like, you need to spend more time in Osaka. Don't do what I did. Add more Osaka days to your itinerary.
I love that. Yeah. Good point, Rosa. I think that sometimes it's a little bit underlooked, because it's also a great base for you if you want to do like day trips and visit other areas. Yeah.
I definitely loved it. I know when I went, so we did Tokyo, we were there for about a week, and then we spent maybe about 4 days in Kyoto and only like 3 days in Osaka. But one of those days we were at the theme park, so we were only there for a limited amount of time, and it was like towards the end of the trip. And I was like telling my husband and daughter, I was like, man, I wish we would have spent more time, but it's an excuse to come back.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, a revisit. And you start from Osaka, and then you can keep going elsewhere. Yeah,
exactly. Then we can kind of branch off a little bit. But one of the things I know I personally love about Japan, so on our podcast, we're always promoting like, female travel, solo travel, and empowerment. But as a mom, sometimes I think when my daughter talks about like visiting places like on her own, I'm kind of like, I don't know about that, Sam. Maybe wait until you're a little bit older. But Japan is like one of those destinations that as a mom, I would feel much more at ease if she picked that as a travel destination to go alone. So for someone who's considering their first trip to Japan, especially like a solo trip, what would you say are some tips for them, and what places, aside from Osaka, of course, for them to visit?
Yeah. I know it feels very daunting. That's not just solo women, even people who are quite well traveled, I think, have maybe never been to Asia. So that's usually when they come to me for guidance and help. And I think it is a really good place to start if you're going to be quite brave, because usually it's a direct flight from, say, like the US. And generally, yes, very like there are, to be realistic, it's like low crime rates. It's a very quiet country, which makes you stand out a lot if you're not quiet. But I think just navigating it, I think it's like just a little bit easier on your nervous system if you say are more introverted. You could go outside of like the bigger cities. Asking for help, people are very helpful, especially towards foreigners. And I don't know. I think that covers a few of the biggest concerns. And then I think this ties into another question. And the concern with solo travel is like expenses. But I actually think that there's either people who think it's very inexpensive because the yen is weak or very expensive. And I actually think that it can cater to a number of, different levels of budget. But with solo travel, it just, a lot of people don't realize when you stay at some accommodations that a lot of meals can be included in that cost. So I think that makes it really accessible for solo travelers.
Yeah, and we lived often 7-Eleven, so you save money that way. Like our breakfast every day was pretty much at 7-Eleven.
Oh my God, those egg salad sandwiches, I pine for them every day. I said this on another episode. My mom and I tried to recreate them and they just did not come out the same. We did get the correct mayo and everything, but I was just like, this is not Japan. But you make a really good point for a first solo trip. It was my first solo trip to Asia, and the direct flight was a huge selling point because from Newark to Tokyo was only about 13 and a half hours. And I'm kind of a nervous flyer. I talk about it a lot on the show. I wasn't sure if I would ever be able to get to Asia because of that, but it turned out to be like pretty smooth sailing. And then once I was there, like I've done a lot of solo trips to Europe, it was a lot easier than I thought. Like the public transportation was very good. It was efficient. It was on time. It was clean. I love taking the bullet trains and having my little bento box and enjoying a meal. And you also make a good point about introverts because I get very nervous dining alone. And I feel like Japan is very well suited for that. Like all the places you can go and get ramen and just sit at the bar. Nobody like looks at you funny or is like, oh, a table for one. It seems to be more accepted to eat alone there, which was like a big selling point for me.
Yeah, you're really right. You know that like Sex and the City episode where Carrie has like a challenge eating alone?
Yes.
I've said in my own podcast that could actually be a starting place. It depends. Maybe, Rachel, you've traveled and then the dining alone part is the challenge, but that could be like a good way to like just kind of edge your comfort zone. But it is very, not even accepted. People don't think about it. It's just the norm in Japan to eat solo, or you'll sometimes be at a table and you're with other solo diners, especially at like lunchtime, if it's like a noodle spot. I mean, it's just, you're just supposed to kind of like be together in a space, but then you don't have to necessarily interact.
Yeah, I love that about Japan. I treated myself at the very end of my stay in Tokyo. It was another Michelin star. My credit card did not like me very much after this trip. I'm just throwing that out there. But it was a 20-course sushi meal and it was at the bar. I would never have the guts to do that like in Manhattan. I feel like people would be like, why are you doing this 3-hour meal by yourself? But in Tokyo, it was great. It was like awesome.
I love that. I love that for you.
Yeah, it was so fun. So with the solo travel and the dining, what are some other common misconceptions people have about traveling solo in Japan? And how do you kind of alleviate them when they come to you for advice?
Yeah, I think another one would be the language. Like, do I need to speak Japanese? Do I, navigating around? I mean, apart from transportation being really efficient and on time, I think that's another big question that people ask me. And if you're solo, of course, I think that what I like to say is that you don't have to. It's a lot of signage is in English and Japanese. If you're in bigger cities, I actually think it is a good opportunity to get to know and interact with people, because a lot of Japanese, especially the younger generations, want to practice their English. But I think that like just having the respect, I always think that intention and respect of knowing a few phrases, I think it's meeting people where they are, right? So I think that really shows that like you care and that you're trying to do the best you can to have the respect. And I think that will open up like spontaneous, maybe invitations, maybe new friends. I think that's like a really good like gateway to, interacting with people. And yeah, you definitely don't need to know. Because also, right, like the script, it's not like Latin languages in Europe where maybe you would kind of know what it means. But yeah, I think there's so much to communication that's nonverbal as well. So I think just like your intentions and your mannerisms can go a long way as well.
Yeah, we definitely agree. We always emphasize that on the podcast. It's like when you're traveling to a new destination, at least get to know like the key words, right? That's going to kind of facilitate some conversation. I know when we went to Japan, we also like downloaded like Google Translate on our phone. So that was a great way to be able to kind of communicate. And for the most part, we found that a lot of people either spoke English or, but we never found any difficulty trying to communicate. Except for one time, I was trying to order like scrambled eggs and the lady thought I wanted chicken, and that was a whole ordeal. But some way, somehow, like we figured it out, and I got my scrambled eggs, so it
Good,
was all well.
good, good. Ah, that's fun. Well, which one comes first, right? The chicken or the egg? It's like,
Exactly. I mean,
good to-
like, she had the concept. So it was so
okay,
funny. It was like this whole big thing. And I was like, on the website, it said they do like Western breakfast style. So I figured they have to have scrambled eggs. But yeah, that was a fun adventure. But like you said, people are always so willing to like help you and accommodate you. So it was definitely a really fun experience for us.
Yeah, it's so true. Like what Rosa said. I know when we were in Hiroshima, I met this woman at the hostel I was staying at, and we stayed out kind of late at a rooftop bar and we wanted some ice cream afterwards. So we went to 7-Eleven, of course, and we got these really cool ice creams. But I don't know if we were just like willfully like dumb because we were out late, but we couldn't open these ice creams. And she was getting so frustrated. So she sees this group of young people and she runs over and she's like, how? She's like, miming, how do you? And they were so sweet. They started just really laughing and they were like, yeah, like, give it here. And they were able to open it for us, but they just like thought it was the funniest thing. And it was like a great connection to have. But I agree. I found that the people are incredibly helpful. There was another time when I was staying in Nico and went to a little local bar by myself, and the couple, they didn't speak English, but we were using Google Translate, and they were so sweet. They gave me free edamame. They gave me free ice cream. It started to rain outside, so the woman, she goes in the back and brings me an umbrella and is like, you can't get wet out there. It's cold. And I told them the daughter spoke a little English, that I was a solo traveler. And the dad was so sweet. He was like, are you going to be okay getting back to the States? You're here all by yourself. It was just like adorable.
that's what a beautiful moment. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really, really, really sweet. So, what are some other ways that travelers can plan a more intentional trip in Japan instead of hitting the tourist spot? Let's like, I know for me, first trip, it was Tokyo, Kyoto, and Osaka. I know Rosa had a similar itinerary. Are there any suggestions that you give visitors for other places to go and try out?
Yeah, I think of it like conscious and intentional travel is really thinking about why you're traveling, why you want to visit, say, Japan, digging deeper and really curating it around their interests. So it makes it unique to you. So I know that social media and makes the highlight reels amazing, but Japan has 47 prefectures and most visitors don't even really scratch the surface. So I think some of the secondary or tertiary cities, depending on your interest, but a lot of visitors don't get to so like from Osaka, if we're looking at a map, even more west or north of Tokyo, even past Nikko even, I think most visitors don't get to those regions. And that means that those communities, those economies are not getting those visitor dollars. And that's a really, I think, intentional way of how you can impact those those people, those businesses. There is a creator I know of, and she shares all of these restaurants. Like you mentioned that beautiful moment in Nikko, it's a bar, but there's so many mom and pop restaurants that just really don't have guests or customers. And I think that's really where you're going to get a sense of the true Japan is in those moments of those mom and pop businesses.
I really love that. And I think you're right too with social media highlighting the typical like main tours. I know obviously when we went there, like Rachel said, I did Tokyo, Osaka, Kyoto, but then we did a lot of day trips. And one of like my favorite day trips is actually going to Kamakura. And we love just like wandering around, seeing the Buddha. And I'm like, why don't people talk more about this beautiful like destination? Like we had so much fun. So again, it's kind of doing your research. And I feel like it's so accessible to kind of venture out, at least to some of these places, right, with the public transportation system throughout Japan.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. I had a friend and client who went there, and I think her challenge was also like the FOMO, like it's my first visit. There's too many places I want to go. So really kind of reining in all those like choices, and that's where like your interests are coming in. And I really guided her. Like I was like, I know you, and I think you'd really enjoyed it. And I think she was with a girlfriend for a while, but then she went solo, and that was really, really fun for her because I think it really just had her slow down which is like a big, when you have a trip that's maybe only, depending on how many nights you go, like 8 to 12 nights or something, then I think you're trying to cram a lot into a small period of time. But sometimes less is more. Often, actually, less is more. So, like Rosa, for you, if you went to you loved Osaka and you go stay longer at Osaka and then maybe one other place and then take those day trips. But I think then you're not moving around as much. And then you can really stay in one accommodation and get to know people who work there and the, businesses around there deeper.
Yeah, we totally agree with that. And speaking of accommodations, what are your go-to accommodations in Japan, especially for solo female travelers? Is it like more like hotels, hostels, or ryokans? I know when we went, primarily we did hotels, and we traveled as a family of three. So throughout our whole time in Japan, it was mostly hotels for us.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of accessible and affordable, even like 3 to 4 stars, I guess they would say, Japanese hotels. So there's like Japanese larger chains, boutique hotels, and or there's, family owned smaller Japanese inns known as ryokan. And I think those are probably my two recommendations. I haven't personally stayed in a hostel in Japan, but it really depends on maybe your age. When I was young, yes, I was staying in hostels in college, but some private rooms in hostels now are like more than just like a hotel room. So it really depends on maybe your investment. But I think that the smaller boutique hotels they're kind of more design forward. They usually include breakfast, and I think locations are great. And then the ryokan is more of that, really experiencing Japanese culture and cuisine, and like kind of the epitome of Japanese culture and cuisine because of their mentality around hospitality. And I think you just get really like a lot of the details that maybe might not always get in, say, a hostel or a hotel. So, I always love I actually did that in February. I traveled by myself. It was a research and scouting trip, and I only stayed at like boutique hotels. So they're not international brands, Japanese brands mostly. And I think I loved it so much.
That
It
sounds
sounds
so
amazing.
fun. That
Yeah.
sounds so fun.
Rachel, we need to go on a scouting trip.
I know. I was literally just thinking that because I love the little boutique hotels, and I feel bad because when I went to Japan, I stayed at some really cool hostels with some really lovely private rooms, but I just love a small locally owned boutique hotel that has a handful of rooms because I feel like the service is always high quality. You really get to know the people working there, which is nice as a solo traveler. So I have to ask for, future reference because I'm going to go back to Japan one day. It is a big priority of mine. On that trip, were there any hotels that like really stuck in your mind that you really loved and are like, oh my gosh, I have to recommend this to literally everyone?
Well, I think there are hotels also that I've booked for clients that I would say, but I hadn't ever been. There's a city that's actually pretty surprising. I'd never been to Nagoya. I've passed it. So many people pass it on the Shinkansen from Tokyo to Kyoto. Maybe some people know about it a little bit more because of the F1. It's not too far from the F1 race that's in Japan, but it is like an underrated food city. And I think that so I stayed at a hotel. There's called Nikko Resort. So it was like a boutique hotel. And the Nikko Hotel there, again, falls into the design for this like beautiful, either Japanese, they had like different types of breakfasts that you can choose. So say you're staying for a few days. I think what can sometimes feel mundane is if you're staying in one place so long and the breakfast is kind of the same. And I think it's great that you can kind of choose your own adventure
I
in
love
that regard. So it's like a main plate or different are kind of the same, but you could choose different ones on different days. And then there's like a buffet aspect to it. And it got pretty cold that day and I was sort of under the weather, but they're just really known they have other little breakfasts that they're known for. So if it's in the hotel, it's kind of hard to also eat this other breakfast they're known for, but they're also really famous for miso. And I think that for me, I really made the intention this time to visit cities I hadn't either been to or I hadn't been to since I was like a teenager. And even if it's not quite off the beaten path, it might be that there are cities where a lot of Japanese visitors will visit or people, maybe even foreign visitors for business, but not for leisure. And I guess that kind of fed my mission is like, okay, I want to get more women, especially to get to these kinds of smaller cities with like, like cafes, like women owned cafes and the cafe culture is like really, really great. So yeah, that would be one of my recommendations.
And you bring up a good point because I know for us, sometimes out of convenience, I do like staying in a hotel that's going to offer breakfast just because it's just easier. We know where to go. But I love the idea of kind of like venturing out, exploring the city, getting to know like maybe like smaller like cafes, traditional breakfast and stuff like that. So I really like the idea of just being able to kind of explore out. But I know when we went to Osaka, we stayed at the Universal Hotel because we wanted to be next to the theme park. And I've never seen a buffet breakfast that came with a map. Like that thing was like, I'm swear to you, it was like immense. And it was, of course, the one day I wasn't feeling well, so I couldn't really eat. And it was pretty affordable. I think we probably paid maybe about 25 US dollars per person for the buffet, which is not bad. But when I tell you, you could have spent like all day and you wouldn't have hit all of the food stations. So
Yeah.
props to that hotel.
That sounds amazing.
They must know their market, because I feel like, I mean,
Totally.
there's so much food in Japan, but it's not always like large portions, which can kind of maybe come to a surprise. But then there's so many opportunities to eat at any time.
My God, too many opportunities to eat. I must have booked I swear, 3 or 4 food tours. And I felt like, especially in Osaka where the food scene's so good, I felt like I was always, always eating, but it was amazing. I miss the food there every single day. I pine for the food.
As you can tell,
Yeah.
we love to eat as much as we love to travel.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. That's the best.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
what would you say would be some tips for solo travelers looking to make friends while they're in Japan?
Yeah. I think I kind of touched on earlier, the local businesses, and I guess it connects to what I had just shared about the coffee culture. I think in any place really for me, but even in Japan, I think when you go to a lot of these smaller coffee shops, even the Japanese chains, I don't think that's a great coffee, or international chains, but going to those, sometimes they're also really pretty. Sometimes they don't have to be, but that's really where the connection comes in, and you can have these conversations. And then I always think that when I do this and when I travel, is that's where I like to ask what their recommendations for places are, for places to eat, or places to, I don't know, maybe there's a bookstore that you don't know about. Sometimes I think it's that human connection, often can be even, I think, just more wonderful than any map or guide can share.
That's really true. I know for me, my guilty pleasure, and I love this in Japan because it was so safe, would be going into those little bars alone and sitting at the bars and talking to the bartender.
Yeah.
They're always such a great resource. They're you have to go here, here, and here. And I feel like I just made a new bestie. I think it was my second or third night in Tokyo. I found this really adorable bar near my hostel. And the bartender saw on my phone that I had a screenshot of me at the Grand Canyon. And he was like, oh my God, I went there when I was 9. So then we got talking and he was giving me all these recommendations in Tokyo. And then I felt sad because I couldn't do them all. So another sign that I have to go back. I feel like I need to book that return ticket immediately. I'm so nostalgic for Japan. It's not even funny.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, if someone does drink, then a bar is a great idea as well. It's sort of the nighttime concept of that cafe, of getting those recommendations. Yeah.
Yeah, and I felt so super safe in those bars too. They were very small and cozy. I wouldn't necessarily be doing that all the time in the US, but I felt very safe doing that in Japan. So another thing that came up that I absolutely loved are supporting women-owned businesses. I definitely try to do that when I'm here in New Jersey. I love bookstores, and a lot of the bookstores that are opening up here are run by women. So of course I want to go and support them. But for a solo traveler like me, because I would love to do this in Japan, what are some ways of finding some of these local businesses and supporting them? Because I feel like there's just so much information out there. How do you wade through it all?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are, either working with a travel consultant or advisor like myself, because oftentimes these are created through relationships, or the hotel. Sometimes I feel like somebody who works at a hotel has a family member who has some sort of business, or just maybe even going to the market, and maybe they have businesses, and going, especially if it's a food market, if it's stalls, maybe just where there are more women. I don't know that it's always advertised as much as it is in maybe other countries, but if it's not a chain, I would assume that generally that at least local or family owned, maybe definitely family owned. And then the hotels or properties or accommodations, sometimes it might just be travel media where they're recognized, but there are more, I think, women proprietors of Japanese inns now, and women taking over family businesses. But it's still a very, how do I say this, delicately? Japan is still Japan.
We're all friends here.
Yeah, Japan. Yeah, there's still I think, a deeply ingrained sexism in Japan, which is why Japan has still very the CEO, like in say like C-suite corporate, it's like in terms of developed countries, it's like the fewest percentage. I imagine that goes into, political office. But I think that's changing. I think the younger generation, I'm seeing a shift, this openness and tools. They have the language and emotional tools, I think, to like communicate, because I think the benefit of social media is that people can see what's happening to some degree in other places. And I think like for my friends there, they don't understand the appeal of everyone. Like, they're like, why is our country so great? Why do people want to live here? And I think it's kind of like that grass is greener concept, because sometimes, yeah, you're not seeing they're not seeing the perspective from someone outside Japan. It's an island nation. It was closed off historically in different moments. So there is sort of like an insular aspect to it, but I think that it's changing. It just takes time. So it feels like you're in the future and like in the 1980s at the same time, because they still use like fax machines at offices. So that didn't really quite answer the question, or somewhat, I think it did. But I think that there is a man, but really the work is big. The women are really the power there probably. And to seek those out, I mean, I would like in the future can compile like some sort of better list, but there are tour operators that are owned by women. I think really even in the travel industry, more women just want more women to like be there, because most of the tourism industry are, women work in them, but it's not being represented as greatly. But there are definitely some, like women owned hotels, properties, certainly management, staff you've probably seen. And some of the best cocktail bars, is true. Like a lot of the cocktail culture techniques come from, Japan. So finding those those badass like female bartenders.
Yes. I have a new mission.
The tours.
Yeah.
And like the tours that you say, like if they're tour guides that you can somehow maybe choose a tour guide and they're women. But I think there's just smaller intentional ways to do it, not like a blanketed kind of method.
And I think this is like also to like the power of social media for good sometimes, because when you're searching online, you can find some of this information, but like you said, it's still not as readily accessible as we would want it to be. So again, just like word of mouth, if you had like a great experience or you went somewhere and you really love it, really talking about and hyping these places up, because this is how we're going to get more women out in the world, be kind of like the face of travel, because it is a very male dominated industry.
And I think if you are, say, working with someone to help with your travel, if you just voice that, like, I want to support more women-owned, more women-owned businesses and local businesses, then if you're their client, then I think they'll just, listen to that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just show the support, because it helps us all to kind of get out there, right? So like women power.
Yeah.
But it's funny what you mentioned earlier in the episode. I mean, I know us coming from like New Jersey, New York, it could be very, very loud. And it is a little bit of a culture shock. I'm not going to lie. My first day in Tokyo, my daughter yelled at me. She was like, "What are you doing, mom? Like, you can't cross the street." I'm like, "But there's no cars coming." She was like, "Do you see anyone else crossing the street?" The signal hadn't turned. But back in the States, like you're in New York, like you're ready to go before the light even change.
You
But
are
in
in that
Japan,
street. You are in that street. It's like, I got places to go.
exactly. You have limited time. But in Japan, no, no, no. Like you wait for that street signal. I felt like everything was like very orderly. Like when you're on the train, it was like so quiet. No one is talking. So again, coming from the States, especially from like the East Coast, is definitely a bit of a culture shock in that aspect. But I feel like in a positive way, right? Because I felt like Japan was super clean. I love the fact that the trains were like silent. No one is like talking or playing their phones or FaceTiming, talking about their like boyfriend girlfriend drama on
I
the
do love
train.
eavesdropping on that, though.
It's fun to watch sometimes, not all the time.
Not all the time. Not when you're tired and you just want to get back from New York and someone's just like screaming into their phone. It's just like, oh my God, just stop.
Exactly. But what would you say are some must-know cultural norms or etiquette tips that the first-time solo traveler should be aware of?
Yeah, I think Rosa, you touched on a really good one. Someone I talked to this past weekend at an event, I asked her, she'd just been to Japan. I'm like, what was the surprising thing? Like, I kind of like to, I'm always curious. And she said something similar. She's like, I wish I'd known how quiet it was. Because A, that makes you stand out even more. And B, you also maybe get some stares because no one's confrontational. But really, that's like a respect thing too. But I think it's like, it's part of, I think it actually also with we're talking about the jaywalking. Sometimes Osaka is a little bit different, like the Tokyo and Osaka comparison, because I've definitely seen people and myself have jaywalked like in Osaka, but it depends on like the intersection and just like the way people navigate, which might be changing a little bit. But I think that generally like at bigger intersections, if there's like they're all,
with like
Yeah.
the
they all
five-way
wait.
crosswalk.
They wait. And then like the actual, something that I learned and I've been going my whole life is the different sounds of the crosswalks are about, that's just something I wish I don't know why I never thought of it. Maybe it was just like in my head is that different, it means different directions. So the chirping, like the different sounds reflect intersections that are going in different directions, north, south versus like east and west, which
Interesting.
I don't know how, where maybe I actually found out after my last trip, but I like never thought of it because it just like sounds that I'm used to. So I think one is a chirp and one is like the people. And so the chirping and because I feel like that there's like ASMR with like once you've been to Japan is like the train sounds and these sounds, even though it is so quiet because it's not people's voices, it's just like city or, you know, just like the sounds of the society. And that is like calming in its own way. It's really the biggest sign of respect. You're going to be removing your shoes a lot. So whatever shoe decisions you make, maybe choose only a couple, so you pack lighter, but also because you're going to be taking them off if you're invited into someone's home or, you know, your room at a Japanese inn. They'll have slippers everywhere. You know, this is like schools, hospitals, anywhere you go, there's going to be like special slippers, which also makes it the cleanliness part. And actually, I think in turn, that actually is why people are less sick with colds and stuff, is that plus the mask, which is so fascinating. Just not bringing the outside in. And I think the language thing, I'm going to go back to that, is that I think that you can utilize English more knowing some phrases because it is part of their education. It was just a very different shift. It was very like reading and writing versus like conversation. So that's why I think a lot of people in Japan feel intimidated or like scared to speak, even though they've been learning English their whole lives. So I think those are some three things. And there's probably more, but I think those resonate the most.
Yeah.
Especially the being more quiet part.
Yeah. And the speaking, like I've definitely noticed people were a little shy or practicing their English, except for this one kid. So this was in Kamakura. And I was like having a snack before I went to see the Buddha, and this family walks by. And I think the kid was like 5 years old. And he like turns and looks at me, stops right away, and is all excited and comes up to me and he's like, "Hi, how are you?" Just like so thrilled to talk English. Well, it was the cutest thing. And the parents and we just started laughing so hard because it was just so precious. He was just so excited. And I was like, "Oh, I'm good. How are you?" And he's like, "I'm good." He was
I love that about
cute.
children.
I know, he was so cute. So cute.
Yeah, I love that about children. I think children really don't have those like their inhibitions, or that they aren't taught yet about like, okay, this is how we're supposed to behave. And I think that and then they learn too. Like there's, you know, like children learning from such young ages because bilingualism or multilingualism is so good for people's brains, how they navigate the world. But I love that you have the greatest little stories.
I know. I'm just like reminiscing. I just like keep thinking of more and more. And Osaka too, there were a couple kids who were practicing English with their teachers, and they had like a little map with them. And the teachers were like, "Is it okay if they practice their English with you?" And I was kind of tired because it was summertime. It was hot. I was just sitting and relaxing. I'm like, "Oh yeah, sure." I'm just like taking it easy for a bit. And they were so cute with their little map. They asked me some questions and they're like, "Where are you from?" And I'm like, "New Jersey." And they're like, "Okay, New York." And they put the pin on New York City. And I'm like, we'll do New York City. New York City's fun.
That's true. Oh, that's good. Oh, so it's like a scavenger hunt with like language or something.
Yeah,
maybe.
they were really
fun.
cute. And they gave me a little paper Pokemon ball at the end of their lesson. Cute. And I didn't know where it was. And my mom found it recently. And I'm like, "Oh my God." I'm like, "Put that Pokemon ball somewhere safe."
That's so sweet. And see, this is what I love about like solo travel also too, because like you could be traveling alone, but doesn't necessarily mean that you are alone in these destinations. And I feel like sometimes it's a little bit more easier for people to approach you when it's one person versus like a group of people. So solo travel just kind of allows you to embrace like these special moments when you're traveling to a destination.
Yeah, such a good point, Rosa, because I think you actually get more outside of your comfort zone than you would at home, or your couples who travel sometimes, or families, like who's going to take the picture. But if you ask someone who's like a solo traveler or they're solo, you know, one of you solo, I feel like that's always a great interaction too. Is would you take? Oh, and you know, I always trust Japanese pictures, but
Me too.
it's like, yeah.
They're good
But
at taking photos.
when I went with my now husband, I asked a woman who was by herself, and I was like, would you take a picture? And it's one of our favorite pictures. But it's just like, will you take a photo? And I think it's such a great opportunity. I had one of those in my trip in February. We were both probably the only women that were solo. And then so when I offered to take her picture, and then she in turn took mine. And then like, what a moment, even if it's only a short one.
Yeah,
Those are the
it's so
best moments
sweet.
sometimes.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, they really are. So, Japan, it's really awesome. And I know Rosa said earlier about her daughter traveling solo that Japan is one of those destinations she would feel really comfortable. I don't have any children myself, but I teach high school. And they always ask me about, like, oh, I want to travel solo and I travel solo. And it's the same thing. I'm just kind of like, oh, your guys are like my kids. But like Japan is one of those places where I would feel super comfortable. But safety is still like a concern, especially for solo female travelers. So, what should women expect when traveling solo to Japan from a safety perspective? Because it is a really safe country, but is there anything that they should just like be aware of when they're planning their first solo trip there?
Yeah. I mean, I think what we're women we're our gut instincts are so powerful, and maybe we don't always like listen to that, but that's that voice, that internal voice is really, yeah, just really listening to that. If there's something that you wouldn't feel comfortable doing where you live, maybe avoid that. In Japan, I have read, some different scenarios. Sometimes think men might be targeted more for certain things, but I would feel like crowded trains, that is why they have we haven't even talked about this, is like the women only cars.
Yep.
In certain trains, especially rush hour, but some of the trains, it's like women only all day. It doesn't have to be certain times because of so Japanese cell phones have to make a noise when they take a picture, and that happened because of these, essentially the harassment that would happen on trains of men taking unwelcome pictures. So I think that is just something to be mindful of. That could really happen anywhere. At least you like hear it, but I think it's just everyone's really mindful of their space. But if you can avoid, maybe I actually tend to always avoid just crowded times, because when you have the ability to choose your time when your itinerary, when you're traveling, I think it's easy to avoid the rush hour. But maybe going in those women only cars, I think, because it's important for our nervous systems to feel safe when we're
For
traveling.
sure.
And knowing, I think the quiet, but obviously if something's wrong, seeking help. It's not like stifling. Yeah, I feel like I've had some friends who've had some harassment and things happen, which is very unusual. Like if you leave your bag somewhere, it's most likely that nothing's going to happen to it. But I'm also aware that there was a family that I know of, and they were pickpocketed in Nishiki Market in Kyoto. I think the woman was maybe distracted by her children, and then they were stolen from her purse, and then something else happened. And I think it's just being aware and present in that sense, because there isn't someone there to like watch your things. And yes, they're safe, but this is probably also why going off the beaten path is so helpful, is because if you are in these like tourist kind of the hot spots, which are kind of adding to the over tourism, I think there are opportunities for, I think most likely they weren't Japanese, but foreigners maybe living in Japan, and they were kind of like targeted during busy times, during high seasons too. So really using the kind of the common sense that you would use at home or in other places of travel, not really, fully letting your guard down. But then, yeah, it's great because then if you're on a longer train ride, then it's quiet and people generally are quite respectful. So I think, and very aware of their space. That's something that I noticed that is culturally unique, I think, more to Japan, is that because especially like Tokyo is a lot of people. It's one of the most densely populated cities. So people are really aware of their space. And I think on sidewalks and stuff, people you might not have noticed, but it's like very subtle with people moving around you. And if they don't, that's very unusual. But I know that, say, like compared to, say, the US or Western countries, people will just take up the sidewalk and not be aware of other people coming. So I think that's just being realistic. But yes, overall, I feel it is a very safe country. And I think sometimes maybe it's safer for foreign visitors than Japanese women who are by themselves, unfortunately.
Hmm.
Because I think most women would probably speak up, and that confrontation is not something that is culturally Japanese. Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah. And like,
I mean, it's, of course it's nuanced, but
yeah.
yeah, to just be aware that there are the reasons that certain things exist and crimes that have happened, but the percentage was obviously quite low, and obviously the type of crime is very different. Yeah.
Yeah. And you bring up a good point too, is just being aware of your personal space and your personal property. I know we were in Japan for about 2 weeks, and again, we traveled as a family, but I can't even think of like one scenario where I ever like once felt like unsafe or like I was kind of like on high alert. Like, yes, we were in certain locations, especially like you said throughout Tokyo, where there were a lot of people and it was like a little chaotic. But I personally always travel with like a crossbody. So I have like all of my cash and my cards like on hand. I try not to like have my cell phone out. Like if I'm taking a picture or looking at directions or something, I'll have it on. Otherwise, I always put it like in my purse. Just that way I kind of feel like it's like close to me, a little bit more protected. Because when you travel, things can happen anywhere. So just kind of like you said, using that common sense and making sure that you are aware. And if you are in a situation where you feel uncomfortable, then trust your gut and try to get out of there as soon as possible or seek help if needed.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, and if you want to learn some phrases, like that's where some of the language might be helpful, is to learning how to ask for help in Japanese. And about your cell phone thing, I thought that was this last visit. And I also know my friend who's Brazilian does it because of people stealing cell phones. Might not really happen in Japan, but a lot of my girlfriends did have like the crossbody cell phone strap.
Yeah.
So that could be a really good idea to maybe get it once you're in Japan. Maybe there's some like little tiny shop and support them and buy that cell phone strap. And then it'll be with you on your whole trip. And I was looking for one and I didn't quite find the one, but it's still on my mind to get it because it would be great for any travel.
Yeah, the crossbody bags really are like my go-to with travel, just because of that. Like especially like say with like cell phone, and I always leave like a couple of credit cards in my suitcase or in the safe in the hotel. So if anything does go missing, at least I'm not like completely out of luck. But I also do like the suggestion about the women only cars on the metro. I completely forgot about those. I met a friend in Tokyo 2 separate times and we kind of stayed out. And both times he was just like looking out for me. He's like, hey, when you go back, maybe go into like the women's only car because things can happen. And like nothing happened. I felt very safe on public transit, but it is definitely an option, especially if your gut is telling you that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And the late nights, people who work at the office, man, they like start early. There's a whole hierarchy to it, and they have to like drink because their superiors are making them drink, and they get a lot. I mean, they're gonna fall asleep probably in the car. I mean,
I did notice that.
Like, but yeah,
I would be tired too.
But when they're a little sloppy, and what kind of filter they have, maybe they suddenly speak English. I mean, so it's sometimes interactions you can minimize. I think, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've been on New Jersey Transit, being on the East Coast, so it's like
I've heard horror stories from one of the conductors. I won't go into it, but New Jersey,
it's like nothing.
That's like nothing. New Jersey Transit, yeah, that's
Jersey girls are resilient. I feel like if you're coming from a small town in rural anywhere really, then yeah, I'm sure any city would be.
Yeah,
you just have to listen to this advice.
It's so true. When I was in Tokyo and I was meeting one of my friends in Shinjuku, and this guy like stopped me and was trying to get me to go to like some sketchy bar, and I was just like, hey, no thanks, and I just kept walking. But it was just like very like New Jersey. I'm just like, look, don't have time for it. Bye.
Yeah. That's a probably good moment. Yeah, you could like some sort of ignore them and keep walking like you would do with like, I mean, there won't be like catcalling, but treat it like catcalling. You could but yeah, I don't know. They get, I forget how that works, but I think they get commission for bringing you in or something. Yeah, entry or something. But yeah, certain places,
little
sometimes sketchy is like universal. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I was just like, don't even. I don't have time for this. And then I texted my friend. I was in a 7-Eleven. I'm like, just meet me here and like walk me to where we're supposed to go. But solo travel in Japan, it really was great. I truly loved it. I know we mentioned this earlier, how there's some moments where traveling alone, you have better connections as opposed to traveling like with a family or with your friends or with a partner, just because like you kind of have to be more open when you're by yourself. So can you share a moment in Japan where being alone actually made the experience better for you?
Yeah. I think there's a number of moments. I was actually so relieved again to take this trip in February in sort of an off-season research trip. I think people assumed that I was coming with my husband. The last time I was in Japan was like a year and a half ago with my mom, who I also travel with quite a bit. But
same.
But I really love solo travel, and there's so many partnered women who are traveling solo or want to travel solo. And I think it's just like you can like hear yourself. Just that, like riding the bullet train, you have no obligation to talk to someone. I'm usually the one leading trips, like because I am so traveled and I'm planned. So it's very easy for people to come with me. And I actually was probably a little bit less prepared than I would be than I would do for a client. So a little bit more spontaneous. Like I didn't have any train times booked. I just got a non-reserved seat. Like just whenever I kind of sort of felt like it, just be a little more leisurely and slow down. I did go to quite a number of places that definitely I wouldn't cram that all in for a client, but it was for a purpose. But I really just being able to wander. I love to just like wander so much and just finding, and I did, get to meet a few friends here and there and a friend in Tokyo, like again, one of those like small bars where like you would never know from the outside. And it's like one of your best experiences. I really love that. I think I don't mind dining alone at all. I find like to really savor your food and be present with your food. And I think it just really, and I just got to choose where I wanted to go sort of with like a time frame, like a little bit before. Yeah. And I get to like, it can be more spontaneous and I like to be so spontaneous, and not that my partner and my mom aren't, but there's just a lot that like, I don't know, just to like hear yourself and just be and immerse yourself in whatever it is you're doing. So yeah, I think it reminded me of how special and important solo travel in Japan is.
I'm already sold. I mean,
Miss
Rachel
it.
and I, exactly. We talk about Japan any second that we get a chance. And like, I'm always like, I'm ready to go. And it's funny because my daughter's in college and like my husband and I were thinking of taking a trip in September. And she sends us a very aggressive text message like, whatever you do, do not go back to Japan without me.
Wow.
I was like, okay, bossy lady.
Yeah. Maybe a mother-daughter trip would be fun for you, Rosa.
Well, no, because I can't leave my husband behind. So it's like,
it's like all or nothing.
Exactly. Unfortunately, like I'm committed to this and I promised them.
Maybe it could be like part of it, the trip is all of you, but then part of it is just you. Like
exactly. That's a nice compromise.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna propose that.
Yeah.
That's
so you get to like you get to linger. Yeah, I think you're like it's for work, right?
There we go. You know what?
Say it's for work. Yeah, say it's for work. Because I'm totally gonna do something similar. Like I said earlier, my friend, she wants to take me to South Korea because there's direct flights to Seoul, and I'm like, you know what? I could always add on the end of the trip a stop to Japan for like 5 days and pick a region and enjoy Japan. I'm totally going to do it. My mom was joking with me. She's like, yeah, when you turn 40, you're going to go back to Japan, I think. And I'm like, yes.
40th birthday. Birthday trips are the best.
Yeah.
It is. It is a milestone birthday, and I feel like you just cannot go wrong with Japan. So if we haven't already convinced you, Sequoia, but what do you say to someone who's feeling maybe a little bit nervous about taking their first solo trip and they're just ready to take that leap?
Yeah, I would say the easy answer is to do it. Just do it and commit. But obviously there's emotion, safety, all of these concerns. And I think actually starting small, like solo, doesn't necessarily have to mean crossing an ocean, going on an international flight. You could really start with just a staycation in where you live or the next town or city over, really edging that comfort zone until you feel comfortable making it, because that is, it's a privilege, right, to travel for sure. And that, and not, everyone's different. It's a very subjective topic. So I think it's, choosing what solo travel means for you. And if you do decide to go somewhere, definitely go to Japan.
Japan is always a good idea.
Japan
is always a good idea.
Yeah.
Oh, Rosa, time for a rapid fire question round.
All right, let's do it.
All right. Are you ready? All right. So, would you rather get lost in the neon streets of Tokyo at night or stumble upon a hidden temple in Kyoto at sunrise?
I'd have to choose the temple at sunrise. Maybe not all necessarily Kyoto, but yeah, temple at sunrise. Yeah. Go off.
Imagine that'd be so beautiful. Like, just
I think
like
it's
the morning glow.
Yeah, pristine time. I think it's just such a more peaceful image. Maybe when I was in my 20s, maybe that Tokyo would have been, but I think later as I mature, for sure. It's like the sunrise. Yeah.
Love that. I love that. This one is fun because I was like so guilty of this when I was over there. Would you rather try every vending machine snack you see or only eat at a small local family owned restaurant for your whole trip? I was addicted to those vending machines, I gotta
I
tell
would,
you.
yeah, I would choose the latter, small owned, family owned. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you said, that was like some of my like best times, best memories were some of those like small, like family, like run businesses. They were just like really
And also your
beautiful.
stories, like you're continuing to share them. It had such an impact, right? Probably on
Yeah.
both of you. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So, last one. Would you rather navigate Japan only using hand gestures or rely entirely on a translation app with no internet glitches?
Oh my. Well, I said earlier that nonverbal communication is 70% of communication. So I think even though I speak Japanese, I think I would actually choose the hand gestures. I
The
think
hand
that,
gestures are
yeah,
fun. They're
yeah, I
fun.
think it's like you're just going to have to kind of do charades, pantomiming. Um, yeah. Versus being like in your phone instead of because I think the hand gestures mean that you're interacting with, still
Yeah.
interacting face
That's
to
how I got
face.
my scrambled eggs instead of the chicken.
Yes.
It's the scrambled
Yeah.
eggs. That's how I
Yeah.
finally found deodorant because I was like running low on deodorant and I had to mime like holding up my arms and applying deodorant in Don Quixote. That was the same night we couldn't open the ice cream in Hiroshima. That was an interesting night.
I feel like we need to hear more about this, but maybe off the camera.
Oh yeah, it was a fun. It was a good time.
Yeah.
Sequoia, we really appreciated having you on the show. So where can our listeners find you if they're planning a trip to Japan and they would like some more information?
Yeah. So I'm definitely most active for social media. It's Instagram at Pueblo York, Pueblo York Inc. So PUEBLAYORKINC, or the website. So same spelling, PUEBLAYORKINC.com. And you can find more information there. Or if you want to hear more about Japan,
Always.
I definitely listen to my podcast, Soul Wanderer, wherever you listen to podcasts. And there's a lot about, especially if you're a woman of color.
Fantastic. Yeah, we'll be sure to link like all of that in the show notes. And we're again really happy that you came on the show, Rosa and I. We want to go back to Japan so badly. And don't be surprised if I reach out to you in the near future when I go there a second time and I need suggestions for where to go.
Yes, I'm gonna book
I'd love
my
to.
workation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go.
I'd love to help. I would love to help either of you.
There you go. So that's a wrap.
You could do a Bon Voyage Besties episode, but recorded in Japan.
I mean, listen.
Hey, listen.
You come up with some great ideas.
Yeah.
Listen.
It's like finding out on syllabus.
I don't care how bad my credit card looks. There's always room in that balance for Japan. So you know
And
what?
it comes back.
It comes
Money
back.
comes back.
Comes
Yeah,
back.
summer. Yeah, vacations are coming up, right? School's almost over soon.
Oh my gosh, yeah, just a month left. Oh my gosh, I can't even. So that's a wrap, guys, on today's episode all about Japan. As you can tell, we absolutely love Japan and want to go back. So a huge thank you to our amazing guest, Sequoia Armstrong, for sharing her insights, experiences, and inspiration around solo travel in Japan. So today we explored why Japan is such an incredible destination for solo female travelers. I mean, we all love it for a reason. And we hope that this episode will help you plan a trip with purpose as well as to support local and women owned businesses along the way, because why not keep your money close to the ground if you're going to spend it anyway? We also covered key tips on safety, cultural etiquette, and navigating the language. So make sure if you bring your phone on the train, wear headphones. Everyone will appreciate it. Don't just like blast music on the train. It's not New Jersey Transit, guys. And we hope that this helped you feel a little bit more confident about your adventure. So if this episode inspired you to look at a solo trip or see Japan in a new way, don't forget to share it with your travel besties and just book a ticket to Japan. Seriously, just do it. It's amazing. You won't regret it. But then you'll be like me and always want to go back to Japan. So there's that. So until next time, stay curious, stay empowered, and bon voyage, besties. We'll see you in the next one.
See you in Japan.
Bye. See you in Tokyo. Bon voyage.